All right, some others still making their way. Just a reminder just to switch your mobile phones off again, and we'll hand it straight off over to Dr. Ramirez. Thank you, Doctor. While Dr. Ramirez is getting ready there, I just thought I'd share, I took him down to the Royal National Park today. You've all been to the Royal National Park? Beautiful, isn't it? And we did a hike down to one of the beaches down there, Burning Palms Beach. Anyone been there? Yeah. Have you had to walk back up? It's very steep, isn't it? And Dr. Ramirez runs, 10 kilometers a day, and he powers up there. And I was sweating on the way up behind him, trying to keep up. And I looked at him up the top. It looked like he didn't even break a sweat. So, but it was lovely. We had a swim. We jumped in the ocean down there. The waves were big, and it's a very isolated beach. But we had a lovely time. And then I took him for a drive, and we followed the coastline down to Wollongong, where we had lunch, and then we came back up. So we kind of did the whole trip. So it's good to show him that part of Sydney. Thank you, Doctor.
As you can see, we can do something for depression. So, as you just observe, depression, when we deal with the root causes, we can overcome it. And just like this lady, Christopher Christie, that she was able to reverse her depression, it is possible to reverse that depression. And the key is going to be to, number one, identifying the root causes, and two, making the right lifestyle changes. So let's go to our second part of our presentation, and that has to do with what are called the adverse childhood events. So adverse childhood events are things that happen in our past that have a big impact on our health. So let us see if you have any of these adverse childhood events. So I'm going to ask you questions. Don't raise your hand and say, oh, me. Okay? Keep it to yourself, okay? Don't say it to others. And as we count this, then you can see, how many of these ACEs you potentially have. Question number one, before your 18th birthday, did a parent or other adult in your household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Question number two, before your 18th birthday, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push you, grab you, slap you, throw something at you, or even hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Question number three, before your 18th birthday, did an adult or a person at least 5 years older than you ever try or did sexually abuse you? Question number four, before your 18th birthday, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Question number five, before your 18th birthday, did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect you? Or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you need it? Question number six, before your 18th birthday, was a biological parent ever lost to you through divorce, abandonment, or other reason? Question number seven, before your 18th birthday, was your mother or stepmother often, very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? or sometimes, often, or very often, kicked, beaten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or repeatedly hit at least a few minutes, or threatened with a gun or knife? 8, before your 18th birthday, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Question number 9, before your 18th birthday, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? And last one, before your 18th birthday, did a household member go to prison? So these are what are called adverse childhood events. And these things are things that impact us very much. So these ACEs, that's how we abbreviate them, we can classify those into 3 groups. The ones that are related to abuse, be it physical, emotional, sexual. The ones about neglect, they didn't meet our needs correctly. So you have, physical or emotional needs that were not met. Or there was household dysfunctionality. There were people that were mentally ill at home, a relative of ours that we used to interact. Suddenly we lose them to incarceration. Mother being treated violently, and there was substance abuse in the household, and sadly, something very common, divorce, and this is something very traumatic to the children, when those things happen to occur. And if you are Bible student, you see that this is not something new. If you remember in the Bible, there were a few people that grew up in this type of environment. One of them, if you remember, the children of Jacob. There was a very dysfunctional household. Lots of troubles and so forth. Some of these things, apply to those members. So these ACEs, sadly, are something very common in our midst. And the more you find them, the more you had in your past, the more they can potentially impact you. And there is what is called the intergenerational transmission of ACEs. Sometimes these things that happen to us, we go and repeat them, in the next generation and so forth. And that's why I'm very happy you guys are here, so that you can break that cycle, and be able to overcome them. So the issue is that these experiences are stored in our bodies, and physical symptoms can often result when somebody had experienced these ACEs. So we know that these ACEs have multiple effects on different areas of our bodies. Now, the good news of today is that we can actually receive healing from these ACEs. And as I was mentioning to you, the more ACEs you have present, the more the probability that actual physical problems will come about. So a person that has 4 or more of those questions that we ask. Now, by the way, this is not a prophecy. This is something that can happen, but we can actually break that cycle. So 4 or more of those ACEs, you have 2.2 times more likely to have ischemic heart disease, 2.4 times more likely to have a stroke, 1.9 more likely to have cancer, and 1.6 times more likely to have diabetes. So this end up affecting many things. Many times the person that was affected by those ACEs, they start having problems with their normal development and so forth. There were not enough food, there was not enough emotional support, so their ability to learn and so forth is being impaired, so the development is impaired. That affects their behavior, and then more likely that they may end up failing the school, may end up using substances, addictions, and so forth. And then more likely, because you didn't have the opportunity to study, more likely you're going to end up with a lower paying job, more likely because of the distraction and so forth, get an injury as a worker, more likely to fall into disability problems and even homelessness and so forth, because it's all connected. Can you see the impact here? You push this one, and it's a domino effect. You start affecting multiple things. But again, as I'm telling you, this doesn't mean it's a prophecy. You can break down that cycle and find that healing and so forth. So notice this one. This is very interesting, how those adverse childhood events actually relate, depending how many you have, more probability you're not going to show up at work. More probability you're going to have serious financial problems. More probability you're going to have issues in your performance of your work. So these things start affecting very much. Just in America, half of the children are exposed to violence, crime, and abuse every year. 26% of children have witnessed or experienced a traumatic event before the age of 4. Exposure to violence in any form, children can have many negative effects through childhood and to adulthood. And in America, I spent $100 billion on problems related to those childhood abuse and trauma. So as you can see, not only it affects the person, but it actually starts affecting multiple layers around the person. So that trauma may not necessarily cause that PTSD, this post-traumatic stress disorder, but it does increases the need. And this trauma is actually quite common, more common in boys, and even girls also is common that. So by the time that the person reaches the adolescent years, those children are more likely to start trying to find some sort of comfort and so forth. So that's why many times they get into addictions as a way to anesthetize, all that past trauma. Because, there's correct ways of dealing with this, and there's incorrect ways of dealing with this. So some of the things that people start doing as a way to try to deal with that trauma in an erroneous way is by starting drinking alcohol, picking up cigarettes, sexual promiscuity, using those psychoactive type of substances, overeating, eating disorders, delinquent behavior, and so forth. And we know, and that's the reason why we're talking about that today, that there's a link between those ACEs and the risk of depression. The more ACEs in the past, the higher the risk for depression. And also there's a probability, increased risk for suicidal attempts the more those ACEs are present. So what can we do for these ACEs? We can do quite a bit about them. We can do the physical side of things with the lifestyle, and in a program what we use is cognitive behavioral therapy. Remember we were talking about this subject previously. So by helping the person, reframe the trauma and so forth is something that can help them. Same story with sexual behavior. The more this AC is, the more likely the teenager, will start engaging into sexual behavior and so forth, teen pregnancy, teen paternity, and so forth. Now, this is the most shocking factor. See, the first time this questionnaire was used was back in 1998, and this questionnaire was developed, and they apply later on this questionnaire to a hospital network in America called the Kaiser Permanente. That's the name of the hospital, the health network. And it was 7,421 people that took that were workers. These people were middle class. These people were college educated. These people had good paying jobs. So this is not, some extreme in society, but rather people, that were making good income and so forth. And notice what they found out. They found out that these ACEs, and even middle-aged people, middle-class people, were actually quite common. 66% of those 17,421 people had at least one of those ACEs. Second finding, they found that if there is one of them, there is an 87% probability that there are going to be others. So it means that things like childhood abuse and so forth, they don't happen by themselves. Usually there's others other factors already there. 3, the more those ACEs, as we have been learning, and especially in this group that was in study, the more likely there's going to be long-term effects. And 4, as I was mentioning, those ACEs, you can correlate them. How often the person, are missing their job, how much they're using on health care, how much they're using the emergency room in a hospital, mental health, how many problems with justice they're going to have, and so forth. So the conclusion in this study is that you can actually explain many of the chronic health, mental health, economic health, and social health problems because of those adverse childhood events. And as I mentioned to you, it's a domino effect. You push this one and you end up affecting things later on in the line. So these ACEs can also explain something interesting that we see as doctors. What is called the unexplained physical symptoms. Patient shows up and tells us, look, I have this problem here. We do the x-ray. We do the MRI. We do the lab test. Everything seems okay, So those unexplained physical symptoms, they're also related to those ACEs. Now, look at this very fascinating study. It found out that plant-based diet on the people that have experienced those ACEs increases their longevity between 4.6 and 6.3 years. That good news or bad news? Good news. So as I told you, the way that we deal with this, we need to start changing the underlying, lifestyle at the same time that we're applying the cognitive behavioral therapy, and at the same time, you also are going to need that spiritual aspect of things, because how are you going to find forgiveness? You need to find forgiveness and put it to peace, the fact that, somebody may have, caused this trauma and so forth. You have to deal with that correctly so that CBT with that spirituality is able to help you find that healing. So the issue is that people with those ACEs, they lose their safety. These parents were supposed to help the person feel secure and so forth. So now they see the world as a very dangerous place. They have problems with trusting and so forth. Even this one very interesting study, how muscle function is even impacted by the adverse childhood events. And you could actually show that with biopsy. You took the sample, of the muscle, and you can literally show those things. 2, a loss of danger cues. So somebody was supposed to teach you, this is dangerous, this is correct, and so forth. You lose sometimes that ability to understand, and get yourself into dangerous situations and so forth. As I mentioned to you, that loss of trust. So, the people that were around you, that were supposed to help you, increase your ability to trust. So these people cannot trust anybody, and so forth, secondary to that trauma. And also this shame is what is called inappropriate shame. There's nothing to be shameful for, Yet you feel that it's your fault, that's why those things happen and so forth. Well, with that CBT, with that spirituality, we need to start helping the person reshape the way that they are thinking about the problem and so forth. And then also the loss of intimacy. These people have problems, opening their hearts and emotional attachment and so forth, secondary to the trauma that happened to them in the past. And dissociation, that disconnect that they use, because it was a way when the trauma was occurring in their life, that dissociation was a way that they were able to deal with this. So, many of these people that went through these ACEs, they're going to have problems connecting their body and normal functions, and they could end up with problems like constipation and so forth due to that dissociation that they do. And also that physical connection that I was mentioning to you. Also, loss of self-worth. And one problem that they many times do is that they keep on playing the tape. The trauma, they repeat it in their head, and they repeat it in their head. And what's happening? Well, anytime they're repeating it, they're experiencing the traumatic effects and so forth, number one. Number two, many times they actually end up making that memory even worse than it was. So that's something that we tell these patients, you have to stop playing that tape, anytime you catch yourself going, oh, no, I don't want to think about this, I can think about something else, because, again, you relive over and over that traumatic event. So look at these other interesting statistics. People with 4 or more of those ACEs 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer. People with 4 of those ACEs, 460% more likely to end up with depression. But as you just saw in the other 10-hit hypothesis, this is one of the factors. So what we can do, we can start supporting by starting to change these other ones, the exercise, the sleep, the order, the nutrition, and so forth. And at the same time, support this with cognitive behavioral therapy and spiritual support. Also, having 1 or more of those ACEs, 20% more likely, for each additional ACEs to end up hospitalized with an autoimmune condition. 6 or most ACEs shorten lifespan by 20 years. But we saw the plant-based diet actually can make a change. And 7 or more ACEs, 360% more likely to have heart disease. And when we're talking about heart disease, remember we talked about this? Remember I told you? There's some people that with the plant-based diet and everything, there's still some progression on that heart disease. And I mentioned to you, it has to do with this emotional and ACE background and so forth, that we need to deal with that, and we need to bring healing to that part in order to improve the health. And we are running out of time, so let me hurry up here. So one of the issues that why this affects is because we have this, stress axis in our bodies. So whenever we are, facing some dangerous situation and so forth, we have stress hormones that increase in our body, and they help us face that situation. Maybe it's a snake that you see there. Well, it helps you run, so you don't get bitten by the animal, or it gives you, enough strength and so forth to violate Australian law and kill that snake. It's not supposed to kill him, isn't it, here in Australia? So this stress helps you to deal, with those situations, that suddenly occur and so forth. Yet, whenever you have sometimes some of these traumatic events in the past, the stress hormones are pumping constantly. And this constant pumping of the stress starts changing the way that we act. And sometimes it's so stressful, we just go in a mode that we just don't care, anything, our motivation goes away and so forth. So what we need to do as we start that healing process of the mind, we need to be able to decrease that. So the thing is that you can actually see some of those stress symptoms in the person. Everything starts at the level of the brain. The brain sends the signal to release that cortisol. So even the eyes start, looking away. The cheeks start blushing. Your shoulders start to tighten up. The heart rate starts to elevate. And then those adrenal glands start pumping out that stress hormones. And then your arteries constrict, so your heart rate elevates even more. And then your muscles are flooded with glucose in order to prepare them for action and so forth. But if there is no action, the body starts to give away and say, what's going on? So what do we need to do? Well, God actually wants to, bring solution to it. God is not going to abandon us. In fact, remember with Adam and Eve, when they were feeling shame and so forth, he went and looked for them because he wanted to bring healing into their lives. And also, those that have been shamed, what does he do? It says there that they were feeling shameful and so forth. God covered them. God brought solution to their shame. And he also, the view of the people that have fallen, that have suffered this type of AC is, he cares very much for them. He wants to help them and aid them. And sometimes because the image that these people that happen to see and cause those adverse childhood events, the image of God is distorted in their mind because parents were not nice. Now they see God as vengative, or they see God as a judge that is just there, trying to go after them and so forth. So some people are actually afraid to come to God. And they say, no, I'm a very bad person. God is not going to care for me. So let me ask you this. Let's say there's a family of 5 children. They grow up. 4 of them are doing very well. They have their partners. They have their jobs. They have their, good economic stability and so forth. So those 4 are doing very good. But one of them is not doing good. He got himself in addictions. He is not able to, have a long-term relationship. The partner leaves him and so forth. He's not able to have a good job because he keeps losing his job and so forth. Let me ask you this. Who does the parent constantly think about? Are they thinking about these 4 ones? or who is constantly in their mind? The one that is not doing good, isn't it? That's the one that wakes up the parents in the middle of the night. They're like, man, what are we going to do, for such and such? How are we going to help them and so forth? If human parents think like that, you think that God cares about you? Yes, even much more cares about you. And actually wants to help you, wants to heal you, wants to, renew you. He is the author of your life. He knows how to fix it. For God, there is no impossible. So God operates in a love basis. God cannot force himself in your life because, that will be violation of the principles of love. So you need to invite him, and he'll come and bring that healing and restoration that we all need. So may God bless you. Thank you very much for coming tonight. And we'll continue with our seminar tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Another verse comes to mind. It says in the Bible, can a woman forget her sucking child? And it says, God says, yeah, they may forget, but I will never forget you. So, God understands. I thought we might just take a few questions.
Yeah.
Dr. Ramirez, anyone? There we go. Thank you, Rhea.
Let's say you have a patient who came to you and you found what the problems were with him from childhood.
Yes, sir.
And you pointed to them, and you will start with the healthy lifestyle, the exercise and everything, and trust in God till you get to the point that that person is good.
That's right.
Not on medication, no medication that person will take.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we see with our patients. So we're able to help them stop those psychiatric medications. Now, it's an art to eliminate those medications. The brain gets used to the medication, so it's a whole art to help those patients decrease the medication. So yes, we help many, many people stop those psychiatric medications. Now, this is important. Those people, many times because of their background and so forth, if they stop the lifestyle, many times the mental health problem can come back. So this is going to be a new way of living. Needs to be something that you incorporate in your daily living in the long term. And that's exactly what I was showing you there on that study on the benzodiazepines, how tremendous amounts of them are able to stop the medications. Our rates for recovery in this program, it's 84% of the people that participate of the program are able to overcome their depression. Now, what's with those that couldn't overcome the depression? Those are what I call the disobedient patients. We're telling them, do exercise. They don't want to do exercise. Change your diet. They don't want to change their diet. Go to bed early. They don't want to go to bed early, and so forth. I'm sorry. You have to do, your part if you want to see those positive changes happening in your life.
Yeah, I saw the 10 questions. Are
Yes.
these only for people in America?
Only one?
Only for people in America? You ask them, have you been through any hardship before 18, or it goes to everywhere in the world?
Oh, this happens anywhere in the world. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
you didn't mention anything about wars.
Oh, yes,
war.
war.
We grew
That's
up
right.
in
Yes,
wars.
that's a very traumatic thing. That war factor. Yes, that's a loss for everybody. So that would be considered in the physical abuse. That would be where the war would fall down. There's actually adapted ACEs questionnaires in which they deal with this type of questions and so forth. Yeah, we're
Thank you.
here. That's right. We're in Australia, so yeah, that's why I chose this one.
I think you turned out quite well, Raya. Thank you.
I just have a question in regards to mercury.
That's right.
So now we're talking about the other night we mentioned the fish of New Zealand, which is classified, to the best of my knowledge, in Australia, one of the best fish.
That's right.
As long as it doesn't come from China where it grows in the pools or whatever, how they grow it.
Yes.
Now, a question that I want to ask is, plant-based food
Yes.
or vegetarian food in Australia,
Yes.
there is no vegetarian anymore. The reason I'm saying that is because it's full of chemicals. Nothing grows like it used to grow olden days, so in a countries where there's not much chemicals and all the stuff. So how would you describe, or how would you suggest someone to follow plant-based, vegetarian? Where would you get that? Because if you go to the farmers in Australia and you want to buy free, fresh food, free from all these things, it doesn't exist.
That's right. Well, it's an excellent question, the one that you answer, and it's very simple, actually, the answer. Because if you're concerned about chemicals, be very concerned about animals. Because of the principle of biomagnification. The higher you go on the food chain, the higher the amounts of toxicities. So if you worry about the chemicals in the plants, check the chemicals in animals. Check the chemicals in the milk. Check the chemicals in the meat, because the biomagnification. See, for example, they're spraying here your vegetables, and this is carried by the wind. This doesn't stay in one place. So, for example, these pieces of grass. How many of those pieces of grass a cow eats? Just one or two?
A lot.
By the millions. So small amounts of that chemical, multiply that by millions, you find tremendous levels of that toxicity in the animal products. So what you do, you're wise at washing the vegetables correctly. That's going to be the key. You can decrease tremendously the load of those chemicals by washing them correctly. Now, about your question on the fish, look at this study. This is from a study that just came out very recently. You can find it on my Twitter. I wanted to make this letter a little bit bigger. Give me 1 second. So look at this. Look at this study. Microplastics are found on 75% of the fish in New Zealand. So not necessarily the most, clean source. As you eat those microplastics, they actually have an impact on your hormone system and so forth. So can you find, good plant-based foods here? Absolutely, yes. Especially, actually, Australia has very high standards regarding food safety. So in other countries, that's actually more of a problem, that they overspray things and so forth. Here, because of their high standards, if something is too toxic, it's not going to come into the market and so forth. In my book, Pandemic Busters, I actually talk about the dirty dozen. You're concerned about the chemicals? Find the list, just Google it, the dirty dozen. Those are the fruits and vegetables with the highest toxicities. So you want to avoid or decrease those dirty dozen. Not all the vegetables have, high levels of toxicity and so forth. Legumes, for example, they have very low levels of toxicities. Many cereals, depending on the cereal, you can also find some very good ones like that. And also vegetables that you peel usually, and fruits that you peel inside there. The chemicals don't go all the way inside and so forth. So yes, we have excellent sources that you can choose from.
Okay, thank you for that. That makes sense, and that's an excellent explanation. So in regards, now I'm coming to your field. In regards to medication that we feed in public, so let's say not long ago we had pantoprazole recall in Australia. But if we look at how much of that pantoprazole that can cause a cancer
Yes.
to a humanity
Yes.
has been sold in this country, you will be shocked.
Yeah.
Now, if TGA, which stands for Therapeutical Goods in Australia,
Yes.
approves something to go to the market and
Yes.
sell to the public, and they drink, because it's a tablet that someone will take it maybe 3 times a day, what about that? Like if we look at every factor in everything, we comparing like Australia, let's say, with the mountain of Bulgaria, it's totally a different thing.
Yes.
So there is nothing that is safe, even the medication that people take in it. And then after they sold 5 million units in Australia, they realized that they need to do a recall, but it's too late because people already have drank it.
Yeah, so then the way that we deal with this, again, the plant-based diet actually brings you some protection. See, that's why all those phytochemicals that are found in the plant, those are beneficial chemicals, you have more than 3,000 of them. So some of these toxicities and so forth, by eating a diet high in these antioxidants and phytochemicals, they're able to counteract many times with this. And that's why we know that people with high, fruit and vegetable intake have actually less risk of cancer. You cannot go to zero. We live in a world of sin, so you will be, exposed to this type of things sooner or later. But you do decrease the risk of cancer. So that's the solution there, having that high plant-based, diet and so forth.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. And I'm sure you all have something in your household that you can wash the vegetables properly
That's right.
with. Does anyone know what that is? Vinegar. Bicarbonate of soda, yes. If you give your fruits and vegetables a wash in that, you'll remove a lot of the insecticide and so forth. So, anyone else? Question? Yeah, okay. Can help. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're very good for you.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, James?
Thank you again, Dr. Ramirez, for sharing all your research and facts about mental illness. I just have a question. Could you explain the process of how illicit drugs such as marijuana can cause factors such as that lead to mental illnesses like schizophrenia?
Yeah, that's very good question. Regarding the schizophrenia, it has to do with the fact that the marijuana that the hippies used to smoke back in the 60s is very different than the marijuana that is being used today. So what they have done through methods of cultivation, they have concentrated that active ingredient of the marijuana, and that modern marijuana is tremendously toxic to the brain because of that tremendous high level. In fact, there's actually an excellent article, if you're interested in this subject. Let me show it to you here. This study that was published on a journal. Let's see. So look at this. It's a couple of them that I have for you. So it's going to be this one here. Okay, so it's two that I'm going to show you. So this is one. Search for this: marijuana, mental illness, and violence. That's the name of the article. Or find my tweet, either one of those, Marijuana, mental illness, and violence. So in that article, it's written in a way that anybody can understand. It's not like super scientific, that you don't have a clue what they're saying. They explain there how the amounts of schizophrenia people that come to the ER is increasing dramatically. And they explain that process there of why that's happening. And then a second one that I have here also on my tweets is this one here. It's an excellent article. This one is from the Journal of the American Medical Association, how schizophrenia is linked to marijuana use and how that is increasing very much worldwide, as the people start using more marijuana, especially this marijuana that is so concentrated, THC. If you're interested about the biochemistry and so forth, that they explain to you there with more detail, but it has to do with that tremendous concentration of the active ingredient of the marijuana.
Thank you, Doctor. Yeah, hydroponic grown marijuana, they're chemicals that are used to make these, make it more powerful. Hashish, things like that as well. I read just recently it's often laced with impure products.
They add stuff
it's not
to make
pure.
it
They
more
add
powerful.
things to it. So, and I actually met a lady one time. Actually, used to come to a cafe when I was younger. I used to work in a cafe there and locally, and she'd cry every time I see her because her son got into marijuana and ended up with schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Very good.
Can I have one last question? We
Yes.
talked about depression.
Yes.
What about things when further developments like bipolar, for example?
That's right.
How can we, how can we see the benefit? I mean, of course, we can see the benefit,
Yes.
but in your experience, have you seen the benefit of what you're sharing here with us also impact people with those acute...
For bipolar disease.
Yeah.
See, bipolar depression is a different problem than major depression, what we were talking about tonight. Yet, it does have some common elements. Research is showing one of the best things you can do for bipolar depression, number one, is bright light early in the day. So, as the sun is coming up, those people need to be out in the sunlight 45 minutes to an hour. That sunlight exposure helps very much control that bipolar problem. Number two, they need higher doses of plant-based omega-3, okay? And you want the concentrated type such as the algae one. You know, that's the one that you want together with the rest of the lifestyle. So we sometimes get some of these patients in our program and we're able to help them, you know, control the problem with the bipolar, sometimes, you know, very maniac, very depressed and so forth. So you want to stabilize them, you know, so that they can, you know, function much better and so forth.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. All right, folks, I think there's one last question there.
Thank you very much. We're facing a big problem in new modality of addictions now among the community. It's elsewhere worldwide now becoming. I just wanted to know what programs available in USA to solve this problem. Is the electric cigarette or vaping, which is totally different than the whole scenario of the smoking, and you know, it's easy accessible, and now it's becoming widely separate among the school students.
Yes.
And it's easy accessible. They just put it in their bags or in their pockets, and they become very addictive to it, and even affecting their performance in the examination, the test, because sometimes they have to puff every few minutes, you know what I mean? And with the high concentrations of the nicotine, and I'm aware that even nicotine replacement therapy used for smoking cessation is not effective to stop this problem. What is the most updated way of programs available in America to fight this problem at the moment?
Yeah, actually the Adventist Church has actually an excellent program for that. And it's called, let me put you here, let me show you the website. You can actually get the training and be certified. Is this one here. So go here. It's called Breed Free. It's a program that the church developed, and you can actually get the training and so forth to learn how to apply this type of program, and it's actually quite effective, you know. So this is an excellent solution. You know, I presented research on the addictions congresses and so forth. And to me, it's very interesting that the spiritual element is present there. Because we know that addiction programs that don't incorporate that spiritual aspect, they're not very effective, you know. Even Alcoholics Anonymous, if you ever seen it, you know. You need to, you know, put your trust in somebody, a power higher than yourself, and so forth. Because humanly speaking, you know, how are you going to overcome this, you know? So those programs that incorporate that spiritual element, you know, much more effective. So this is an excellent program, Breed Free. That's the second version of it, the 2.0. You can get that training and be able to even, you know, help, you know, the people in your community and so forth by educating them and helping them, you know, gain that victory.
Dr. Ramirez. It's good that they've outlawed vaping in Australia now. Can I invite you just to bow your heads with me as we close with a word of prayer? Loving Father, once again, thank you for this time together. Thank you for the tremendous importance, Lord, that you place upon our health and well-being and that of our loved ones and that of our community. Lord, help us to apply the things we learn again. Help us to carry this knowledge within us. We're thankful, Lord, that we are recording these presentations that will be available for us to review in the future as well. So in the meantime, Lord, I'd just like to, on behalf of everyone here, just uplift those that we know who are struggling in various areas we've covered so far. And we thank you for the focus on the spiritual side tonight that Dr. Ramirez has brought forward, that we can find help in you, Lord, in a divine power to overcome some of the obstacles, to help us in some of the difficulties and the trials of life. And so, Father, may the glory and honor be yours, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow night. What time? 7 p.m. Who are you going to bring? Friends and family? Enemies?